Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Op Sy Voete Rugby Podcast. Now, everybody has that one friend, right? The one that takes rugby just a little bit too seriously. While everybody's watching the game, chilling, maybe just having a nice relaxed afternoon, this guy is yelling furiously at the TV for a local Currie Cup game. Or, and this might hit home for some people, right in front of the TV, crouched down like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, frantically writing down player notes, observations, and strategies. Now, I've always been both of those people. I come from a line of Afrikaans rugby supporters, which basically means that my grandfather, the dude, used to take off his shoes and throw them at the television screen whenever he got upset. And so with some polite urging and support of some of my friends, probably because they just wanted me to stop sending 200 WhatsApps after every game with detailed comments, I thought I would gather up some of my notes and I'll try to see whether I'm able to create some interesting content for the YouTube rugby community. Now, I know there's a wealth of rugby analysis and commentary already available on YouTube. Some of my personal favorites are 2 Cents Rugby and, of course, Squidge with his excellent analysis and commentary. I've left a link to both of them down in the description below because I really believe that these guys are worth a watch. But so with a lot of that ground already covered, I don't just want to do the same thing. I want to add something different to the discussion and take a bit of a different direction in these videos. I will be focusing less on an overall sort of blow-by-blow account of each game, and I will also not focus too much on specific key moments in every game. Rather, each week, I will be focusing on what I think are interesting strategies that have emerged, as well as some key player performances, highlighting some guys that have a good or sometimes not so good day at the office. And so with that in mind, I'm going to be looking at the most recent test match against Argentina, drawing out some key strategic insights and doing a deep dive into some individual player performances. I've got my notes, I've got some clips to have a look at. Let's go. So what's clear now in the last 2 games against Argentina is that South Africa is doubling down on their kicking game. In the previous game against Argentina, there were 40 kicks from hand in total. This game was a little bit less, but no different, 27 kicks out of hand. Now, just for comparison, 27 kicks from hand is more than in some games against the British and Irish Lions. And although it seemed at times like Nienaber might be happy for the boys to move the ball around a bit more, as soon as things got stuck against Argentina.
We've got to keep our composure! We've come too far! There's too much to lose! We've got to keep our composure!
Now, the reason this strategy is so successful for South Africa is the amount of possible good outcomes when the ball comes down. So if we look at this clip, if South Africa managed to recover the ball here, excellent. The defense is disjointed and they can mount good attack on a defensive line that is still rearranging. But a second possible outcome is that with the pressure coming from the South African chase line, the receiver is unable to control the ball and knocks it on, as happened multiple times in the Lions series. And here we see this in the 14th minute. This again gives South Africa possession and a scrum feed where they will back themselves to scrum for a penalty and chew up even more space. A third possible outcome, which is that South Africa competes for the ball and fails to control it and knocks it on, still results in a scrum where South Africa can compete favorably. Still not a bad result. And this is exactly what happened here in the 68th minute, where South Africa competes in the air, knocks it on, but wins the resulting scrum feed. And even if, in the fourth outcome, the opposition recovers the ball, the chase line from South Africa is so quick that they can either line up and smash the receiver backwards, like here in the 47th minute, or something that South Africa also loves to do, create a partnership between a winger and a fetcher so that the winger can shoot up, make the quick tackle, and the fetcher can attempt to jackal the ball, like Mapimpi and Sia does here in the 11th minute, or like Colby and in the 13th minute. South Africa did this on a number of occasions against Argentina, here again with Colby and Kitshoff in the 65th minute. The only real risk here is if the ball goes too deep, because then it invites the defending team on for the counter-attack. South Africa's defense is not set properly, and our chase line can't get there quickly enough to smother the attack. South Africa was guilty of this a few times during the test, and they cannot afford the same inconsistency against a ruthless New Zealand attack. But if South Africa can keep the ball from going too deep, there are 4 possible outcomes, and each one of them is positive. So this has become a real trademark of South Africa under the Erasmus and Nienaber axis of rugby world domination. It's just so incredibly difficult to break down. The Springbok team posted an infographic last week that just sums it up. Over the last 12 games now, with the games against Argentina, that's not on this graphic, South Africa have only conceded 5 tries. What's even more significant is that if you strip out tries conceded from line-out mauls or counter-attack, that slips to 2 tries in 12 matches. One of which was against Canada in the Rugby World Cup when South Africa was already 47 points up, and the other against Argentina over the weekend when South Africa was down to 14 players with Jaden Hendrikse off the field injured. Now, what this means is that during normal attacking play, defenses find it incredibly difficult to break down the South African defensive system. Argentina, in the previous game against the Springboks, tried to go around and through them. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. This time around, they attempted to use the boot a little bit more to gain some ascendancy, but in my opinion, it just took the bite out of the Argentinian attack and didn't give them proper go forward. Here, at the 14th minute, with a ruck close to halfway, the Pumas in the previous game, or the Pumas of the second half, would choose to attack. But instead, Bertranou drops the ball too deep for any possible aerial contest, and the Boks have possession and good field position. When the Pumas did attack, though, they still struggled to make headway, partly because of South Africa's excellent work at the breakdown. Here, at the 50th minute, they finally decided to chance their arm a bit and string a bit of positive play together, but good South African defensive reads drives them backwards until Colby, of all people, effect the turnover. This, for me, was the South African defense in this game in a nutshell. We always knew that the Argentinians were going to up the effort in the second test to try and replicate some of the Argentinian passion and intensity that led them to their first ever win against the All Blacks in 2020. Unfortunately, much of that intensity led to over-eagerness and poor judgment calls on defense. Argentina had, wait for it, 13 penalties and 1 yellow card by half-time, and a shocking 21 penalties with 2 yellow cards at full time. Against South Africa, that either loved to chew up territory with penalty kicks and then maul further for even more penalties, or with Pollard kicks incredibly accurate behind the tee, ill discipline is going to seriously hurt you, and it decisively put the game out of reach for the Pumas. Now, I know that sometimes penalties is merely a result of transferred pressure, right? South Africa's defense is so good, and penalties are for holding on or entry from the side of the ruck. These penalties are not necessarily foul play, and to be fair, there were a few scrum penalties as well. So the narrative of Argentina being completely undisciplined in the game isn't entirely accurate. But it also is completely accurate at the same time. Guido Petty in the number 7 jersey here clearly changes his bind in the maul and right in front of referee Carl Dixon, who, to be honest, had a whistle-happy afternoon on Saturday. And then Petty proceeds to do exactly the same thing at the subsequent maul. Here, in the 9th minute, Argentina is way offside. There's no way the officials are going to miss this, and it just gifts South Africa a free play. Soft, lazy penalties. Here in the 70th minute is probably the best example. Argentina finally have good forward ball after they inject some pace into the game by taking a penalty kick quickly. But then a absolutely unforced penalty for a shove on Willemse just reverses all of the gains that were made on attack. Now, a few other things that stood out for me strategically in the game but didn't warrant a deep dive was South Africa's conservative play again in this game, opting after sustained pressure on Argentina's try line on several occasions to only opt for 3 points. It's a good problem to have, right? When the chief criticism against the team is that they are so far ahead that they should be ignoring 3 points and instead go for the try. It looked like this strategy was carried heavily by Khaleesi, as we can see here in the 34th minute. Pollard actually getting ready to kick for touch, but Sia saying, no, wait up, we'll rather take the points, thanks. Some other interesting things to note for me was that Argentina failed to learn from the Lions' success in restricting South Africa's line-out. The Lions were so successful in opting to, instead of kicking to touch and handing South Africa the line-out, to rather keep the ball in play and make it contestable. I am surprised Bertranu for the Pumas didn't consider this as an option and instead just allowed South Africa to set their maul from line-out, which was such a powerful weapon for South Africa all game. But so on to some key player performances, and there were a bunch to choose from. I've started this week with the big boy on his 50th test match for South Africa, Lodewijk de Jager. And you'll see for every player each week, I'm giving them a player rating out of 5 beers. Loet takes home 5 out of 5 this week. Now, Loet has been struggling with injuries since he left the field in the 21st minute of the Rugby World Cup final. But after having been reintroduced to the game slowly, Loet is playing some of the best rugby of his career. He had some outstanding performances in the Lions series, and the last 2 weeks were no exception. Loet is now the second highest ball carrier for South Africa across the entire tournament. He also has 14 tackles, which is the most across the tournament for any player. 6 line-out wins and 1 line-out steal in this game, which equals 11 line-out wins across the tournament, also the highest of any player. Now, I know New Zealand and Australia have only played 1 game, and South Africa and Argentina have now played 2. But in some of these metrics, like line-out wins, the closest competitor to Loet is Sam Whitelock with 5 against Loet's 11. So Loet still is some ways ahead. Loet stated his intention literally from the first minute, making a telling physical contribution across the entire game. Being such a threat on attack and having some agility, Loet also allows South Africa to run dummy plays off him by focusing the defenders on him on every carry. On this line-out feed in the 30th minute, just look at Loet's precision, both in taking the ball and laying it back for the drive. He had an absolute standout game against Argentina and absolutely deserved the man of the match accolade on the evening. The next of the standout performances for me this week was Malcolm Marx, who I felt gave Loet real competition for man of the match. Marx has had a strange journey for the South African team, having burst onto the scene in 2017 during the Lions' resurgence in South African rugby. That year, he won SA Player of the Year, SA Young Rugby Player of the Year, and SA Super Rugby Player of the Year. But unfortunately, since there was a subsequent dip in form, and under the Erasmus Nienaber coaching setup, Marx has played second string to Tendai Beeston Tawarira and lately Bongi Mbonambi. But having been given the starting berth this week, Marx firmly put up his hand for a starting place in the team. Marx was pinpoint accurate in the lineouts in combination with De Jager and Mostert, and left the field with a 100% lineout accuracy. Marx also boasts an incredible ability to stay strong over the ball when contesting at the ruck and earned South Africa 2 valuable turnovers. He also scored South Africa's second try from the base of the ruck and contributed some good defensive hits. Another notable performance over the weekend came from the bruising Argentinian loose forward, Pablo Matera. Now, in the previous game against the Boks, Matera had an unusually quiet outing, having been outshone on the day by Facundo Isa, a standout player for Argentina in the last game and one that Argentina dearly missed. But in Isa's absence, Matera is the one that stood up. Right from the start, Matera was accurate at the breakdown, winning an early penalty. His strength over the ball and good awareness throughout the game really benefited Argentina. And he is now the third highest ball carrier for the Pumas in the tournament, which for a loose forward is an incredible achievement. Here in the 78th minute, it is a dangerous situation for Argentina. Sanchez has kicked the ball deep, South Africa is desperate for the bonus point, and Willemse fields the ball in space. He manages to evade a few defenders, but waiting around the corner, Pablo Matera. Matera not only went over for the Pumas' only try of the game in the 85th minute, but contributed strongly to their field position to be able to do so, with good linking and passing play, as well as some strong carries. Almost similar to Matera, another Argentinian loose forward that had a quiet outing in the previous game, Rodrigo Bruni, really came out firing for Argentina. Bruni is an incredibly strong defender and reads the game incredibly well. Here in the 3rd minute, we can see that South Africa is flat on the attack. Bruni reads the play superbly, smashes Visa back in partnership with Chocobares, and forces the turnover. Here again in the 6th minute, South Africa has a wonderful line break with taking the ball up strongly. But just watch how hard Bruni works to get back and make this tackle. Try saving stuff and an absolutely textbook tackle. Bruni also had some deft touches of the ball, drawing defenders and then passing the ball into space. And although Bruni was sent off in the 34th minute with a yellow card, to be fair, that was more the result of repeated Argentinian ill discipline rather than Bruni himself. The next player to look at is now one of the worst offenders in terms of cards in the modern game, Thomas Lavinini. And you always just have a sense that one is on the horizon for this guy. Lavinini is a tough old ball carrier, even against a set South African defense, and he made some telling runs on the night. He was Argentina's highest ball carrier on the evening, tied with Tete Chaparro, and he made 8 tackles and had 2 really good turnovers. Lavinini also put some real pressure on Reinach behind the ruck, getting 2 charge downs in the process, and was an all-round nuisance for South Africa on the night. As always, however, with Lavinini, you get the good with the bad, and Lavinini conceded 4 penalties on the evening and earned himself a yellow card. I genuinely felt bad for Lavinini here because he survived the entire game without being carded. And then in the 80th minute, he just makes a silly, unnecessary late hit on Pollard and has to leave the field. Our next player to look at, Jasper Visa, has had quite a turnaround in terms of performance since his debut. He was under all sorts of pressure in the Lions series for South Africa after failing to control some high kicks. But in the last 2 games, his performance has been sublime. Visa has grown into his role in the Rugby Championship and is an incredibly good ball carrier for South Africa. He always just manages to find an extra meter or 5 and is able to guarantee South Africa good momentum. He does still have some areas that need attention, but after round 2 of the Rugby Championship, Visa holds a number of very impressive accolades. He has the most run meters for any player across the tournament, most defenders beaten across the whole tournament, and highest ball carrier across the whole tournament again for any other player. What's even more stunning is that Visa was substituted in the 50th minute, which makes these figures even more incredible. With Vermeulen getting on in terms of age, it seems Jasper might be on the start of a long journey for South Africa, and it serves as a telling reminder that one bad game does not define a player. Bongi's inclusion here is unfortunately not a positive one, as he struggled on the day and will widely be held accountable for South Africa's failure to net the bonus point. I feel bad for the guy because he didn't have a completely terrible game. His early lineouts found their mark and was otherwise consistent. But the few that did go wrong went horribly wrong. And they were all on the Argentinian 5-meter line, where the South African pack, given how well they all performed during this game, would have backed themselves to score. A really unfortunate contribution for Bongi in this game. So, other guys that merited a mention this week was Julian Montoya for Argentina. He was good in the lineouts, he made some telling breaks on attack, and now boasts the second highest tackle count across the entire tournament. Thomas de Toit also deserves a mention. Good contributions in the scrum, very strong on defense, and some handy turnovers as well. I also thought Khaleesi had an excellent game, and the young loose forward, Nicholas Janse van Rensburg, this might be a guy to watch. He had a very solid knock when he came on as a substitute. Anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you guys have enjoyed this inaugural episode. This is literally the first YouTube video that I've ever made in my life. So hopefully over time I get a little bit better at this. But if you did enjoy the episode, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to be notified of any further episodes or content, just hit subscribe. Also, please let me know in the comments what you think of the player ratings that I've given. Would you have given them differently, or who were the standout players in the game for you? Banter is always welcome, but with some of the nastiness in the rugby community in the past few weeks, man, I really hope that dies down or just lowers in temperature a bit. Because we as rugby fans are a passionate bunch, but we sometimes need to be reminded.
Hey, I got a ring up here too. Mine says love. Think about that. Everybody love everybody! Come on!
So, now we head into the next few weeks kind of not knowing what to expect. Who will play who? Where will they play? When will they play? No one kind of knows, right? As a South African fan, I'm just eyeing those 2 New Zealand games. And how special is that 100th test match against the All Blacks going to be? There's a big showdown looming. What it looks like, we'll just have to wait and see. Until then, enjoy yourselves and bly op jou voete.